And before we start, I want to make a point here. Listen to this. And now listen to this. I've set up the solo buttons in Sonar so that they're grouped, but one was on and one was off when I put the group together. So this is an easy way to toggle between two tracks for A-B comparisons. The first track is the final mixed and mastered version of Television. And the lower track, number 2, is my mix but without any plugins. No reverbs, no sends, no buses, no echo, no EQ, no compression, no nothing. The point I want to make with this is that mixing modern pop productions is really as much about sound design and sound sculpting as it is about balancing levels and making one instrument louder and softer than another. And when we look at the at some of the details of these productions, you'll see some of the severe EQ and other effects that had to be done. Not only EQ, but compression and reverb and ambience. Ambience is the same as reverb, but with a shorter time, and it gives the effect of instruments and players being right there in the room with you, as opposed to a big wash of cathedral-type reverb. And just along these lines, let me just play a couple other pieces just so you can hear the extreme differences here. And the differences are even more pronounced in a cello rondo. Much more sound sculpting was needed, very severe EQ to take 37 different tracks of a single physical instrument and make them sound different, and some sound full and some sound clear. And here's a few segments from that. You can hear it's all the same instruments, all the same notes are being played, everything is exactly the same, except one sounds, I think, pretty exciting, and the other sounds really dull, boring, and lackluster. And hopefully we'll be able to see in this final section how you can get your mixes to go from this to something more like this. All right, and here we are looking at the tracks in Rondo. I actually prepared a special 720 by 480 version of this. This is one of the toughest things I ever mixed because it was the same physical instrument used for lots of different sounds, and there's really a lot of severe equalization used on this. And we'll just look quickly at some of these things here. Here's the, I also gave these kind of funny names: tinker, brusher, thumper, bonker, slipper. Here's the tinker part. And this has some fairly severe equalization here. Without it, and you can hear a lot of thunking. If you're going to use equalization like this, especially boosting the high end, it's very important to have a very clean recording. I recorded all of the parts in a cello rondo with a single Audio-Technica 4033 microphone, and it was fairly close mic'd. I really wanted a pop sound. I wasn't looking for a big classical music sound. So the microphone was about a foot away from the cello. I call this the brusher, and this is where I'm scraping the strings with the bow. And this also has a lot of EQ, really severe. And this is what it takes. Here's how terrible it sounded without the EQ. And maybe the reverb and ambience mudded up a little bit. And that's a lot of times what you have to do to make stuff come out. And the thumper is the thumper, of course, is the kick drum part. There's very little reverb. It's way down at minus 22 and just a little bit of ambience. But here's the raw recording. And it's really way too resonant. And again, lots and lots of really severe EQ. So all of that equalization really tightens it up and actually makes it sound like something. The cello bass has a lot of processing on it and a lot of compression. And maybe this is a good point worth talking about compression generally. Just to hear the difference. Equalization is cutting out around 300 hertz here, which is kind of that boxiness. And the compressor is an automatic volume control and makes notes sustain. And this is a fair amount of compression on this. Every time this meter comes down, that means the volume is being reduced. There's a little man inside here that sees when things are loud and turns the volume down. And then as the note fades out, it turns the volume back up. And this here shows how much the volume is being reduced by. If you can hear the difference. And that adds a lot of sustain and power to the bass. It really makes it sing out longer and not sound quite so wimpy. That's like a kind of a conga bongo drum kind of a thing. And again, I'm getting rid of a lot of the mid-range honkiness at around 850 hertz. And bringing up some of the slap part with the high-end boost. It's not too severe, though there's a fairly severe cut, and you can really hear that working. And again, I have compression in here, which evens out the notes and makes it sound just a little more polished. So compression is quite a staple of recording tools, as is equalization. And here's without any effects. You can hear it's just a little clearer. I have in this case, a mid-range boost and a little bit of low-end boost here. But the 3 kilohertz is a high mid-range treble, really, and it just makes it clearer. And the reverb and ambience give it presence and life. Some of these chords just can't be played by one person at a time on the cello. I have that, and turn this one off so you can hear these upper two. And then bring in the low note. When you watch the video, it looks like I'm playing it all at once. And it's the magic of recording technology. Plink duet would be the pencils on the cello in mid-range boost, just to make that come out clearer. Let's solo that. So it adds a lot of mid-range there, and of course the reverb. Ambience is a very important effect. It's really just reverb. And this is on a bus. It's just reverb, but it's very short. And I'm going to just turn that on and off so you can really hear the difference with that. That sounds a little like a bathroom, and that's actually kind of a lot of ambience. I don't usually put that much on tracks. It just gives it a sense of being in the room there with you. And let's do that again with a little less, a little more realistic amount. As opposed to reverb, which is like an auditorium, gymnasium kind of effect. I remember when I recorded that, and I did that one note at a time. In the video, it looks like I'm playing it as a chord, 2 notes at a time, but I did not really do that. There's this note. And this note. And a ton of echo on there. This is panning automation here so that this cello goes from the left to the right as it goes across as it plays. And the sol ponticello is a technique where you play very, very close to the bridge, and it has a very thin sound. This is volume automation where the volume fades up, holds for a little bit and fades down. And yes, the right way to do that is you're supposed to do it by playing it that way. And if you look at the underlying waveform, you can see I did play it that way. It gets louder and softer, but I goosed it and exaggerated that even more with volume automation, so it gets even louder than it was. So yes, the cello playing starts off soft and gets loud, and then I exaggerate that. Again, a severe low-end roll-off. Everything below 300 hertz is rolled off again, so it doesn't clutter up the bass playing and everything else. Here's without the equalizer. And you can hear all that rumbling in there, and that rumbling is just noise. It just doesn't contribute to anything. And I can't emphasize enough that's a very common mix technique. It's used all the time in pop music production, rolling off the bass frequencies on anything that doesn't really need it. Here's part of the rhythm. And again, you can see this is made up of 3 different notes here to make these chords. I played them 1 note at a time. Well, yeah, so this is a 2-note chord. So this is two notes here, and these are individual notes probably. And then bring these in too, and I wish I could have played it all at the same time, because it could have been possible, but there's this droning part. And that's called a pedal tone in music theory talk, because organists would play that kind of a drone with their foot on the pedal. So that could have been played with the thumb, and this could have been played with fingers, and that's the way I mimed it when I did the video, but really it's separate pieces. Without the severe equalization, and getting rid of a lot of resonances and getting rid of all this low end, bringing up the mid-range. It sounds truly dreadful, and that makes it much, much clearer, makes it sparkle, and then you add the compressor, it smooths it out even more. And there you have it. There's some highlights in the mixing of a cello rondo, and how I got from what you heard at the beginning of this segment, when it was with no plugins, to all plugins. a lot of time, a lot of care, a lot of effort, a lot of concentrating on one track at a time. And I know that many famous mix engineers say, oh, you can't solo tracks. You have to listen to the whole mix, how it works together. But, you have to solo tracks. It's the only way you can really hear where the muddiness is coming from. And if you solo a track and turn off, especially echo and ambience and reverb and stuff, you can better focus on what you're doing. And then you can just hone in on each thing.